Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, I'm going to be doing some French country thrift flips. In all of today's projects, I'm going to be using Redesign's Toile de Jouy decoupage paper. I am a huge fan of anything Toile. I have a lot of it in my home and I just could not wait to try out this design. There are so many gorgeous provincial scenes here that I just had to use in my projects today. My first project is this silver tray. It is metal, but obviously it's a little bit banged up. We're going to give it a makeover. I'm going to be using Couture's Prima in grey, and I'm just applying that with a paintbrush. This has already been cleaned. Definitely important that you don't skip that step. I'm going to do one coat, let it dry for a few hours, do another coat, and then let that dry for a few hours as well. Once I'd given my primer enough time to dry and cure, I took out Paint Couture's Cozy Beige chalk paint. I am applying that over the top of the primer. Now I'm going to do two coats, but this has great coverage, so the second coat was quite light and really sort of only like a touch-up coat. This is a really lovely sort of taupe sort of tone. It's got a lot of creamy undertones as well, and I felt like it tied in well with the background color of the Redesign decoupage design. I let both of the coats dry and then I took out the decoupage paper to work out which design I was going to feature in the center. I love this little cottage scene here, so I'm just using my fingernails to make little indents as a guide to help me cut out what I'm going to need. And then I went in and sort of rounded the edges. I'm just going to be having that sitting in the bottom section and just sort of stopping before it starts to go up that edge. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's decoupage medium in matte, and I'm just applying that medium to the bottom section of the tray where the decoupage is going to go. I'm going to be quite generous here, especially with the weight of this paper. It's a lot thicker, so you want to make sure you're being very generous with your product. I'm then going to position it down in the center and smooth it out, and then I'm going to apply another generous layer over the top to seal everything in. As I was working on this project, it definitely reminded me a lot of some of the transfer wear styles that I had seen in the past, and it was just so fun to be able to finally use this paper. I do have it on my website if you're in Australia and you'd like to try it. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Crackle Step 1 and I'm going to be applying it over the entire tray. I did start off thinking I was only going to be applying it to the edges and on that transition line to try and blend the entire piece together a bit more, but I actually decided to go over the entire thing. I felt like that brought the piece together a bit better. You could actually see some of the cracks over the top of the decoupage paper as well, so I think it was definitely the right move. I let that dry for about 30 minutes and then came in with Paint Couture's Crackle Step 2. You'll know that the Step 1 is ready when it feels sticky and tacky to the touch. That means it's ready to go. And once I had finished applying Crackle Step 2, I let that dry for about 2 hours. Once the crackle medium was completely dry, I took out Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antiquing Glaze and I'm applying this over the entire tray. I am going to work in sections, however, so that I've got enough time to wipe back some of that excess with a wet wipe, especially over the decoupage section, even though it is obviously really sealed in with that crackle medium. I just wanted to be sure that I would have a even look to this piece. So I'm just going to work my way around applying that lovely glaze and really enjoying the look as it settles into all of those cracks. Now, if you don't have a crackle medium, an alternative to this could be IOD's Vintage Textures stamp that does have the crackle stamp in that. That's definitely a good option. Obviously, my vision for this piece was to create something that looked like it had been around for many years and had really gained that antiqued sort of a look. If you don't have access to glaze, you could use a wax for this step, or you could create a brown paint wash. Once the glaze was completely dry, I took out Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic, and I'm going to just be adding it over the top of the outside border section. I again wanted it to look a little bit like faded gold gilding around the edge of the plate there. And again, it's up to you if you decide to add this step in. You could come in with the gold if you wanted. I did think about coming in with a blue that tied in with the center design, but in the end, bronze was definitely a good choice. I really love the shine that this brings. I then also took out a wet wipe, and I'm just pulling back a little bit of that to give that appearance of wear and tear. And here's a look at our finished tray. I'm really pleased with how this piece turned out. I think the decoupage design in the center has given this piece a whole new look. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my second project, I'm going to be working on these 3 little frames that I thrifted. Now, they are made of some sort of plastic or resin, and they don't even have glass. They've just got little plastic inserts. We're going to give them new life. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Cozy Beige chalk paint. I haven't primed these. I find that the chalk paint sticks pretty well to pieces like this, and any sealer that was on these has long since gone. They definitely had a bit of a porous feel to them. So I'm just going to go around and add 1 coat of the Cozy Beige chalk paint over the top. I really loved all of the floral details, the ribbons. I just felt like the colors that they had added made it feel a little bit cheap and dated. So I'm going to go over the top of it with this lovely creamy tone first, and just applying that same 1 coat over each of the frames. Once the paint was completely dry, I took out the Redesign decoupage paper, and I'm just working out here how much I'm going to have to cut out. I love this little house scene here with the carriage. I know that definitely had to be a part of this little set, so I'm just cutting that out. And then once I've got that organized, I'm going to grab out the oval frame, and again I'm just going to trim out what I need. And also obviously we've got that other rectangle, so I'm going to grab this scene here with the horse and that lady there. So once I've done that, I'm going to set those off to the side. I've taken out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze. This is a darker, deeper brown tone, and I'm going to be going over the top of the dry Cozy Beige chalk paint. My vision for this is that they are old, worn wooden frames with beautiful carvings. So I'm going to just continue to add that product over the top. You would have seen I just sort of slipped that little plastic sheet back into the frame. That's just to protect the inside piece from the product that I'm using rather than taping it off. So I'm going to continue applying that glaze, and then once I'm happy with the coverage of that, I am going to be taking out a wet wipe, and I'm going to be pulling back some of that product, but just off some of the high points and a little bit in certain areas. Again, I want this to look like wood, and obviously wood isn't just one perfect tone. You've got lots of different tones of brown there. So I'm hoping to simulate that on each of these frames. So just repeating the same process on the oval frame and obviously the other rectangle frame as well. If I happen to take off too much of that glaze, I can just go back in and add a little bit more. Same with if I wanted to deepen up that tone, I could just add another layer of glaze once the first one was dry. When the glaze was dry, I started applying Paint Couture's Decoupage Medium in matte to the backing of the frame itself. I couldn't imagine anyone wanting to use these for anything else. There was no glass, it was just a plastic insert that was discolored. So I thought, let's just add the design directly into the back. The decoupage design that I wanted to put there had a little piece missing, so I had to find it and cut it and layer it back in. So we're just layering that back over the top of it. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to add another layer of that decoupage medium over the top. The color of the frame backing ended up being almost a perfect match for the tone in the decoupage paper already. And obviously if you were going to do this but you had glass, you could definitely just slip these designs into your frame and use them like interchangeable artworks instead. But as I said, these just had the backings that were attached, no glass, so I felt like this was a really good option. So once I'm happy with that, I am going to move on to the next one. I did use the oval insert here to help me and guide me to be able to cut out the shape that I needed. So I'm just applying the decoupage medium on the back part of the oval frame here now. And once I have a nice generous coat on there, I'm going to add our little artwork there from the Toile decoupage paper, smooth that down. And just like before, applying another coat over the top. Once I finished the oval frame design, I cut out the other design for the rectangle one, and I'm going to apply the decoupage medium on the back of that. Now with this one, there was a little dog in the bottom right hand corner, and I am definitely a dog person, so I definitely had to have that little doggy there included. So I'm going to position it so that it's not cut off by the edge of the frame. So I did have a little bit hanging over the edge, so I will go in and trim that off once that decoupage medium has dried. So just sealing that all in, and then we'll be done. And here are our finished Toile artworks. I love how these turned out. I think that these will end up being part of my own bedroom decor. The frames no longer look tacky or cheap. I think they look very classic, very much like carved wooden frames. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. For my final project, I'm going to be working on this lovely little lamp that I thrifted. Now, I loved the shape of it. I loved the height. There's a spot in my house that this is going to go, but it definitely needed a refresh. So I'm going to take the lampshade off first, put that somewhere safe, and then I'm going to be taping off the cord and the top section of the lamp base, and then I'm going to be using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in grey to prime this surface. Now obviously this is going to help my paint stick, but that grey tone is also going to stop those colours coming through the paint. I want this to be a much more neutral piece. Those little flowers were lovely, but there were definitely petals and bits of it that had broken off over the years. So by going over the top of this with paint, we're going to be able to hide that while still showing and appreciating the beauty of that lovely design. So I'm going to continue adding the primer. I did end up doing 2 coats on this piece, and then I took out Cozy Beige again. This is definitely the color of the day, and I'm going to be applying that over the top of the entire lamp base. Now I am using a pointed tip brush, Eco brush. I believe this is the size 10, and I'm just really working that paint into all of those details, and I'm applying that paint in a dabbing and stippling motion. So this means that we won't get brush strokes. It will just look like texture, and I did end up doing 2 coats of this lovely creamy tone over the top. I knew that the lampshade was going to end up being quite busy with what I had planned, so I definitely wanted to keep the base simple. I sealed this with Rust-Oleum's clear matte sealer when I was finished. Next, I'm going to be working on the lampshade. I discovered that I was able to peel off the fabric that was already attached on there. The inside plastic frame of the shade itself was actually in really good condition, so I decided that rather trying to paint over the fabric, I would see how I went peeling it off. And as I said, I was very happy to find that I was able to do this. Definitely saved me a lot of hassle. So I'm just going to continue to peel that fabric off. I think it had just been adhered down with some sort of fabric glue. I then took out the Toile decoupage paper by Redesign, and I'm just going to work out what part of the decoupage paper I'm going to be using. I already know that I am going to have to cut these into almost triangular shaped panels because I want the seams to be straight and the right way up. If I just try and apply it as is, I'm going to have some images on an angle and it just will not end up looking very good at all. So I'm just working out here what I'm going to have in each of the panels. I wasn't super careful about the size of them, so I do end up having one that was a little bit smaller than the others, but honestly this is a lamp for myself, and it all really did start to come together quite nicely. It's not something that you notice, obviously. You can see here that I'm just using that first panel that I cut out as a bit of a guide as I'm selecting some other scenes from the decoupage paper for my lamp. Once I had all of those pieces organized, I started applying Paint Couture's Decoupage Medium in matte in sections and started adding the decoupage paper down over the top and just really sort of smoothing that out and then trimming off the excess down the bottom. I'm not too worried about the transition lines between each of the pieces as I add them, because I'm going to be adding some trim over the top of that to separate and tidy up each of the sections. So I'm going to work my way around, applying some more of the decoupage medium in each of the sections and adding each scene along the lamp. I was trying to be careful to make sure that they were relatively straight. Like I said, I definitely didn't want to have some scenes on a bit of an angle. I thought that would look a bit odd. So I'm just going to continue adding the designs until I have the entire lampshade covered. Once I had the final piece in place, I went back over the top of the entire lamp with the decoupage medium to seal everything in. You can see that each section has overhang down the bottom and up the top. That's so that the material, or in our case decoupage paper, can be folded over here, and I can add some hot glue and just sort of press that down, and that will hold it in place. It's a really neat way to finish off a lamp. So I'm just adding that glue along the top rim of the lamp in little sections and working my way along and folding that fabric or decoupage paper over. I'm using a low temp hot glue gun here because it is very easy to burn yourself, and obviously I didn't want to get really bad burns, so this is definitely my go-to when I know I'm probably going to get some of that glue on my fingers. Once I had all of the edges glued down in place, I took out some of this sort of twine style trim that I had in my stash, and I'm just going to go along and work out how much I'm going to need over the top of each section's sort of transition line. So I'm just lining that up, and then I'm going to trim that off. I do have extra so that I can glue it up the top and down the bottom as well. I'm going to run my hot glue gun over the top of the area where I'm going to want the trim to go, and then I'm going to press that along that line. I'm then going to add more glue on the inside top section so I can fold that trim piece over and under, try and make a little bit neater, and then also down the bottom as well. Now, as I said, I did not do this perfectly. Each section is not the exact same width long, but I wasn't going for perfect. This is a lamp for myself. I have never covered a lamp before, so this was definitely a fun learning experience, but overall I'm definitely happy with how this came together. I love Toile, and I just love that I was able to use a decoupage paper to create a piece of decor for my home. As I was putting this together and cutting out the different scenes, I was more focused on what the scenes actually had in them as opposed to the length and getting everything perfect. I then moved on and started adding some glue around the top rim of the lampshade, and I'm going to apply that same trim around the top edge. Obviously this is a step that you don't have to add, but I just wanted to keep going and really frame everything out, and I definitely feel like adding this trim gave it a more finished feel. So once I'm finished adding the trim to the top section, I will be moving on to the bottom and repeating the same process. I went with a pretty neutral looking trim for this. Obviously you could go a little bit bolder. I did have a gold trim in my stash that I considered using, but I decided to play it safe. But yeah, you could definitely come in and you could add in something a bit bolder. Perhaps a velvet ribbon would have looked beautiful as well, but I went with a more neutral look for this one. I then started adding the trim around the base, as you can see, and if I have any of those little hot glue tendrils or little strings, I will just go back around and grab those and tidy it all up. And here's a look at our finished lamp. I love how this turned out. It's not perfect by any means, but I am definitely happy with this transformation. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video and that it's given you some ideas on how you can use Redesign's Toile de Jouy decoupage paper. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today, including that beautiful decoupage paper, on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.